You're listening to international investment advisor Doug Goldstein on the Goldstein on Gelt show, the financial show where we'll talk about how you can make the most of your money. With all the confusing financial chatter bombarding you each and every day, Goldstein on Gelt will give you the practical information you want and need about living a financially stable life. Here's your host, money maven Doug Goldstein.
Okay, we are back. I'm happy to have back on the Goldstein on Gelt show Dr. Harold Vinegar. In 2008, he retired as the chief scientist of Royal Dutch Shell, and he and his wife and son made Aliyah, and right now he is the chief scientist of Israel Energy Initiatives, a publicly traded stock. Harold lives in Jerusalem, and it's a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you, Doug. It's great to be here.
Last time we spoke about some of the basics of what oil shale is and how it's brought out of the ground by heating it up. I'd like to touch today a little bit more on some of the geopolitical concerns. If Israel has a large oil reserve of any sort, how's that going to change the way we are, or the way Israel's looked at on the world political scene?
Well, I think it's going to revolutionize the oil industry in the world. There is vastly more unconventional oil than there is conventional oil. And almost all of the unconventional oil is found in the democratic, stable countries of the world that are today net oil importers. So the United States, for example, has at least 1.2 trillion barrels of shale oil. And Israel has over 250 billion. And Jordan has probably as much as Israel, if not more. And if you go around the world looking at the countries that have the best oil shales, they are the ones that are net importers. It's not by coincidence, by the way. Oil shale is basically a source rock that, if it were buried deep enough and hot enough, would have generated the oil that made countries like Saudi Arabia such great oil countries. But because it hasn't been buried deep enough, that's why it's there as oil shale and as a potential source of unconventional oil. So if we can, in Israel, prove up a oil industry based on oil shale, it will have repercussions on all the other countries that have unconventional oil. And what we will see, basically, is OPEC being much less important in the future, and these stable democratic countries becoming the major oil exporting countries.
Sounds like an interesting plan that God had when he put the democratic countries on top of all the shale. Let me just touch on, is this a disputed point, meaning for people who are not in the oil industry? I've certainly heard read articles where people say you don't have to worry about oil, there's easily another 100 years, no problem, and you're telling me that there's more unconventional oil than conventional oil. Is this a debate among experts, or is this something everyone's agreeing on?
There's no doubt that the unconventional reserves that are in the world are vastly greater than the conventionals. No doubt about that. There's only about 1 trillion barrels in the world of conventional oil that's left. And that's what we call the proven reserves of the world. And at the rate that the world is using oil, that will be used up in about 40 years. Now, the hope is that there'll be enough exploration for new conventional oil to make up for some of that, but there's no doubt that the growth in world population, particularly in the emerging countries that presently don't use very much energy per capita, that there is a shortage of inexpensive oil in the world. And so with the price of oil rising in the future, these unconventional sources will play a larger and larger role. So no doubt that the world is not going to run out of oil, but there's also no doubt that the price of oil will be rising and that unconventionals will be much more important.
Isn't there a certain market force that we'll see at play, which is when oil gets to be high enough in price, so alternative energy will simply be developed, more money will go to research, solar and wind and the like, so that eventually people just won't need or be dependent on conventional oil or unconventional oil?
I see a very important role for the renewable energy sources, solar, wind, etc. But they're starting at such a low base. Only a few percent of world energy use is from those renewable sources. So even with a tremendous growth rate, by 2050, there's still only going to be a very small percentage of the energy used in the world. You have to put it in perspective. The world uses every second, right? Every second it's using 30,000 gallons of oil.
Amazing.
Just as we're talking. So the scale of energy use is so large that the fossil fuels will be playing the dominant energy role far, far into this century. But it's also true that we've got to slow down on the amount of CO2 development. And herein lies a very interesting feature. Everybody thinks that unconventional oils will be dirtier, more carbon dioxide intensive, and more expensive. And the fact is that the revolution that's occurring in the unconventional field is generating less CO2 than conventional oil, and that the price of unconventionals is crossing over the price of conventionals, so that we may actually be cheaper in the marginal production of unconventional oil than conventional oil.
That would be quite something if we could really see the changing tides. We're talking to Dr. Harold Vinegar, who is the chief scientist of Israel Energy Initiatives, recently made Aliyah after a 32-year career at Shell, where he specialized in unconventional oil. This is, in fact, his second time on the Goldstein on Gelt show. If you didn't hear the first interview, be sure to go to www.goldsteinongelt.com and listen to the first interview. Harold, I just want to follow up on something we started with, which is how there's a change into the unconventional world. There are a lot of conspiracy theorists that say that the oil companies are so powerful that they've been able to stamp down the alternative energy companies. Is this just the stuff of movies, or is there anything to that?
I don't believe that that's true at all. The things that you make these movies out of are just not true. It was not my experience at Shell at all that they were trying to suppress renewables. In fact, at Shell we were very much involved in wind energy, and we had a solar company. But the truth of the matter is that the renewables are not economic at the moment, and their scale is so small. It's such a low density energy source, the rate at which sunlight is falling on the earth or the wind is blowing, that you just cannot replace the fossil fuels. So I don't think any of the oil companies either have the power to or even the desire to stop the development of renewables. They're so busy just trying to keep up with their own depletion of conventional oil that there's room in this world for both fossil fuels and renewables, and in fact, we're going to need even more than either of those two. I think we will also be using nuclear in the future. So the world is not black and white at all. It's all shades of gray, and all sorts of different energy sources will be used in the future.
One of the discussions that came out when Israel had a huge natural gas find a few years ago was that the government now felt that it was time for the government to take its fair share in terms of taxation so that all of the people of Israel could enjoy this. This is a huge debate, obviously, because the companies who had invested years and years searching for the natural gas, it's finally time for them to make their profit, on the one hand. On the other hand, it's, of course, a natural resource of the country. First, could you comment on that? And secondly, given the exploration that you're involved in for shale, oil shale, what will happen once you find and prove that there's a great supply there? Is the government just going to come along and try to take perhaps too much?
Okay, well, a couple of things. The the oil and gas laws that were in effect from the time Israel became an independent country were basically designed to encourage companies to come into Israel to explore, because basically there was in 1948 no oil in Israel, and there was a hope of finding some. So they gave very favorable terms to oil companies to come to Israel, and none did anyway. And so even with the favorable taxation regime. Now what happened was with the discovery of natural gas in the Eastern Mediterranean, and Israel felt that it needed to revamp the oil and gas taxation laws, and I fully support that. They found so far about 25 trillion cubic feet of natural gas off the coast of Israel. And if you look at the seismic data, they're going to find easily twice or even more than that.
Wow.
This is an enormous amount of natural gas. In fact, it was the largest natural gas discovery in the world in 2009. So the revenues that are coming to Israel with the revamping of the taxation laws have got to be used in an intelligent way. You're talking about tens of billions of dollars over the next decade. And so what Israel has done wisely is to replicate the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund model, where the revenues go into this fund, and it's invested both domestically and internationally in a way to help the future generations, and primarily education in Israel, national security, and improving various renewable sources of energy, and making Israel's economy more competitive.
And is this in effect already? Because frankly, I haven't seen a lot of prices go down, nor more budgets to my kids' schools.
Well, the natural gas from the first field, the Tamar field, will be starting in 2013. So it won't have an effect for a few years. But the combination of this enormous amount of natural gas and the even larger amount of oil shale. Now, you should understand that as large as the natural gas discoveries are, the oil shale in Israel is orders of magnitude greater in value. In fact, for each unit of natural gas that's used to heat the subsurface, you get 6 units of oil coming out. So it's like a chain reaction. You just use a small amount of the natural gas that Israel's discovered, and out comes 6 times as much oil.
That's amazing. So
Israel's got a future that's just almost unlimited. And nobody in the world really recognizes what's here in Israel. This is an amazing country with a very bright future, and it's got to use its oil and gas wealth wisely. Otherwise, you have the effect that you saw in Holland, where there was a large inflation that occurred due to the natural gas that was discovered there, and it basically put other industries in Holland at a disadvantage because of the high inflation rate. So the Norwegian model, where they took the revenues aside and they used it for future development of the country, is a very wise one, and I'm very pleased that Israel's starting the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Okay, this sounds fabulous. We've been talking to Dr. Harold Vinegar for the second time on the Goldstein on Gelt show. Again, if you missed the first interview, go to goldsteinongelt.com and download the podcast of that. Harold, in the last few seconds, could you just let people know how can they learn more about the work that you're doing?
Well, you can give them the address of our IEI website, which is http://IEI-energy.com. And there's a history of what we're doing, and they can follow the developments of our company. Also, there's the mother company of IEI is called Genie Energy, and it has a Genie website as well. So you can follow it there.
Okay. Dr. Harold Vinegar, thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, Doug. A pleasure to be on your show.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world, but if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.